YouTube. This will be my second video about Maui, and I hope you watched the first one. So far, there's only been 31 people. I'm trying to get it out there, as I talked to you about before. The algorithm, is one of those things. I tried to get it posted on Eric's channel and so on and so forth. He just hasn't seen it. So therefore, not a lot of people have seen, the first video yet. But the hope is, as I continue to do these, eventually they'll start to be seen. If you could help by sharing them as well as you see them, as I said it again in the first video, that's what helps. Subscribing and watching it all the way through, it really helps. So, shaka aloha, and let's get right into this. So where we left off last time was Front Street, barricade, the whole thing, and how that was totally ridiculous, should have never happened. But we're going to go from there. So the next thing I had on my list was, why was the water not available? So if you've been, following along, basically Maui is owned by, I think it's like 30, again, these are just numbers I've seen. I didn't write them down, so on and so forth. So private entities, so much percent, the people of Maui own so much percent, so on and so forth. Well, the water company ended up being purchased. And so there are different entities that own the water. Essentially, there was this one individual that wouldn't release the water. Why? Like, on God's earth, I don't care if somebody owns this water. Not releasing the water in a crisis like this, where people are dying and so on and so forth, it doesn't matter. I mean, it literally doesn't matter who owns the water or the rights to the water. It's ridiculous. Like, in an emergency, the water is needed. And there should be provisions that it doesn't matter who owns this water. If Maui needs it because of something like this, it's released, it's available. It rains there more than any place on earth, literally. The only reason the island is so dry is because these people or these entities started purchasing the water. Some of it's to go to California to help, with California's droughts and everything else. So, but at the end of the day, an emergency is an emergency, and the water should have been released. One person shouldn't be in charge of, I need to talk to whoever owns the water or our section of the water, whatever, and find out if it's okay. That's ridiculous to me. Like, it shouldn't even be a thing. If there's an emergency on the island, it's the island's water, not yours, not whoever is paying for certain rights of the water. It's owned to the island. It's owned to the people. So that's ridiculous. And that person and whatever company he represents absolutely should be gone after for preventing people from getting the water. That's a lawsuit in itself. So where the town is trying to sue the electric company, nobody's talking about the water, right? That's somebody that should be sued. Emergency water is emergency water. If the hydrants are dry, firemen can't do their job, period. So that's something that, again, with all these critiques and things that I go over, this is for the people. When they finally see these videos that I'm creating, these are the questions from a fireman's perspective, 30-year veteran of the fire department, also fire inspector and investigator. These are the things that need to be asked and brought up. And as I brought up in the last video, dispatch records all communication. So all of this communication, I hope the government doesn't go in and take all the recordings. The FBI doesn't go in, take all the recordings. Like, all the recordings of the fire departments or the dispatch for police and fire should be available to the people, to the attorneys that start to represent the people, and so on and so forth. Because if they're not, and if they're taken, it just adds to this whole entire nightmare of BS that's going on over there. So I want you to make sure that you get those recordings for the entire situation, all the dispatch communications, all that, because that gives you a clear picture of what happened, what was being communicated, who was in charge, on and on and on. My next one was, or is, why is the police chief the coroner, and what experience does he have? So where I worked, and the police department in my city, there's 0 people that are going to be coroners on either department. That's not our job. We are not trained. We don't have the medical experience, the multi years of experience. Can we go to an incident, and I've been to thousands and thousands of them, and tell if a person is deceased? Absolutely. But we can't call that person. We cannot say they are deceased. That comes to somebody more qualified than us, and it's usually a coroner or a medical examiner that will make that final decision. Never the fire department, never the police. We don't, identify bodies. We don't get into all the forensic science of all that stuff. My chief that I went up through the ranks with, that still works for the fire department as chief, he's never been a medical examiner. He's never been a coroner, and he never will be, because he's not trained. The police chief where I'm from, same thing. So how does this guy that's from Nevada show up here 2 years ago, get a huge raise? In my opinion, he failed in Nevada. He failed during that shooting. And now he shows up here in Maui, gets a raise above what he's looking for. He's making more than any police chief in the entire 50 states now. Average salary for a police chief is around 130 grand a year. He's making over 200,000 a year. Why do you think that is? Well, let's get into all the fishiness of this entire operation. Let's get into, he was responsible for the entire situation. He was in charge in Nevada during the shooting in Las Vegas. Maybe they liked the way he dealt with it. When I say they, whoever these people are that are trying to turn Maui into this like new AI hub, and trying to think of the words, but all electricity, electrical power, whatever, change everything, get rid of fossil fuels, right? And make Maui the poster child of beginning all of that. Why Maui? Like, why that place? Why this whole incident happened? And we're just going to continue to get through this. But in my opinion, the police chief has no business. And so, since then, I've seen in some videos, all of a sudden this guy walks out with the white coat, so he looks like a doctor, and maybe he is. I didn't research him and so on and so forth, and I'm sure he is, because they wouldn't just bring somebody on there. But all of a sudden, he, now is the coroner or the medical examiner. Well, what about all the, examinations and so on and so forth that the police chief was doing? Did he go back and look at all that? Did he, make sure that this guy's doing it right? Because I guarantee you, he was never trained to be a coroner or a medical examiner. He just took on the role. Why? So maybe they could hide what's going on, so on and so forth. I don't know. I have a right to my opinion. I don't know whether it's true or not, but that's what I feel like. I feel like he took control of this entire situation that is going on there and is being paid to do it. And he was willing to do it in Nevada. He's willing to do it in Maui. And they're paying him a handsome salary to do it. So, never should have been the coroner. Shouldn't be the coroner. Shouldn't have had anything to do with the deceased, period. Another thing I want to talk about is, again, this to me is not confirmed, but it's important because if this did happen, then it would make a lot of sense why the fire that started in grass built so fast and so on and so forth. So supposedly the government had a spill on Maui, and it spilled down from the mountains down into the area going right towards Lahaina and all that grass, the hillside. And this happened, I believe, a year ago. And I don't know if there was a cleanup or not, or so on and so forth. I haven't seen it. I haven't been able to find it. But why I bring it up is that day there was a fire captain and there was another person, and I saw it on video. And that person was his neighbor, and they could see the smoke coming their way. They lived on Front Street, and or very close to Front Street, and they could see the smoke coming that way, and so on and so forth. Eventually, see fire and the heat, and so on and so forth. So the fire captain decided, we're out of here. I'm taking my family and we're leaving. And if he decided that, then of course, his neighbor decided to leave as well, grabbed his family, and they left. The reason I bring this up is because they were having a conversation prior to that, and the captain knew that there was a fire in that field. And according to him, the fire was out, knocked down. Now, they stayed on scene for what I believe was at least 3 to 4 hours. Could have been 5. And that's typical. That's something that we would do because we want to make sure that there's no fire, like let's say there's trees and so on and so forth, and the fire burns through the tree, gets down into the root system, can travel underground, and, just the heat alone, get other roots going and so on. Brush fires, forest fires, they have a way of continuing to burn. So they stayed on scene and made sure the fire was out. They left. Fire's out. And they had spent plenty of time there mopping up, as we call it, and making sure no flashovers, no flash fires anywhere. Everything was out. Within an hour, that area was fully involved. And why? How? And according to this fire captain, there was only one thing semi-close, whatever, and it was a shed. Now, according to other eyewitness testimony or stuff that I've seen on videos, including Eric West, when he was driving in that direction, he saw a giant black cloud of smoke. And we're talking giant black cloud, not just like a puff coming up or whatever from, a telephone pole fire with a transformer burning, something like that. Like a giant cloud of smoke. A black cloud of smoke can only happen with hydrocarbons burning. Oils, gases, greases, rubber, which rubber's made of hydrocarbons, things like that. You won't get black smoke. You won't get black smoke in a grass fire. You won't get black smoke in a tree fire. It has to be hydrocarbons burning, which typically would be a fully involved house fire that has plastics in it and all kinds of other things. Car fire with the tires burning, plastics inside, everywhere, so on and so forth. Gas tank starts to burn. That's going to produce black smoke. The oil from around the engine, that produces black smoke. But you won't have black smoke in a grass fire. It doesn't exist. Now, if that oil was still there and they never cleaned it up, that could absolutely aid and add. That's hydrocarbons. That's oil. So the oil will create that black smoke. It also burns a lot hotter than a grass fire. Add wind to that, and now you have a rapid moving fire that's a lot hotter heading in the direction of Front Street. And any structures that are in the way as it's going there, they're just going to, radiant heat will get there first, the convection, you got the wind blowing, all of that, the superheated gases and everything else that you see as smoke is heading in the direction of these buildings or houses or whatever that are made of wood and so on and so forth. More grass. It had to jump a road, from what I understand, which would pretty much be impossible, but it does happen in situations where, there's high winds and so on and so forth. But you wouldn't have had the black smoke. Certainly not from a shed on fire that was wood, unless that entire shed was full of tires, oils, gases, or whatever. But that would have burned furiously right there. And in front of all that was more grass. Not even any trees, grass. So this would burn crazy if it was full of stuff that has hydrocarbons in it. But it wouldn't generate the heat or produce or push that fire into that town and destroy it all from the shed. Impossible. Would it have helped with the grass fire? Absolutely. So the point I'm making is that needs to be investigated. That should have been done immediately. Immediately, right after the fire was knocked down and so on and so forth, the fire investigation from the fire department of Maui should be testing the area of origin of fire. Again, I was a fire investigator. You go to where the fire started. Typically, it burns in a V pattern. And this grew a little bit wider, but it's still more like a horseshoe pattern, right? But it started somewhere. And something started it. So you can test around. You can have dogs go and smell for any, incendiary things. Was it gas that started it? Oil that started it? What's there? Test the ground. Take samples, right? Look at the burn pattern. See how it traveled. See how it got progressively worse, so on and so forth. So on and so forth. That's where you start. That's where you start the investigation. And it should have been done immediately. I don't know whether it has or not, but that's what has to start. Because if they start putting down these chemicals to prevent this, that, or whatever, all you're doing is contaminating the scene. If nobody has been up there doing anything or has been driving all over it or whatever's going on, you're contaminating the scene. And that's obviously a problem. So that needs to get investigated. Was there oil there? Did that contribute to this fire? Because I can tell you that if there was, it absolutely would have. My next one I already talked about, have they investigated the origin of the fire? I don't know whether they have or haven't, but it needed to be done right away, literally the next day. They could have started, typically wouldn't be started until the next day when the fire is knocked down, but it should have been right away. They should still be doing testing in all these other areas because there are all these questions about, microwave things, burning things to everything to ash and so on and so forth. And again, being a firefighter, I haven't seen things burn the way that they have in these buildings. Not toilets, porcelain, everything was like it was in an enclosed environment. If you're going to cremate a body, even a body, right? Bones, flesh, so on and so forth, it still has to be an enclosed environment. And then it's burned. And it will eventually go to ash. But it's burned in a controlled environment that's all enclosed. So that way you can generate the amount of heat necessary to burn it to ash. All these houses were out in the open. And in my experience, I've never seen any houses burn to complete ash, where it's just a wall standing or a random dishwasher or whatever. I've never seen it myself in all my 30 years. I've also never seen aluminum on any car fire I've ever dealt with pooling across the road. This is not conspiracy stuff. I've never seen it in the thousands of car fires I've ever been to. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I've investigated car fires. Never seen it. And I don't know what could create that. But it's not going to be a grass fire. It's not going to be this house was on fire and all of a sudden it burned this car in front of me. I've never seen it. And I've seen plenty of cars that started on fire. And what they're called, like, is if your car is next to your house or next to a building, it's a car fire with exposure. The exposure is the building. The major concern is the building. So we try to get the car fire out as fast as possible to help prevent the building from starting on fire. That's obviously something that I would have investigated majorly before all of that stuff is removed. Like, they're talking about removing everything and so on and so forth. Some of those cars are still down there and they should be investigated. How could that happen? Take samples of all of that. This is just a question that I thought of. Essentially, the emergency manager, he stepped down day after the fire. He said that he didn't sound the alarms, and he was fine with that decision. It was the right decision. Clearly, it wasn't the right decision. And that's another problem. There's just so many problems, right? That's what we're all seeing this. And they all just, like, you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist. You don't have to, if so many things don't add up, there's an issue, period. You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist. And until you get answers, which they don't give us any, and why did this guy step down? They say health issues. Health issues? Supposedly, the day before, he was at a convention, right, with FEMA on how to handle situations like this, right? They were on one of the other islands, Oahu, I think, or something like that. And now all of a sudden he, has health issues. Why? How? Seemed totally fine. Seemed totally fine during the interview. He stepped down because he knew he was in way over his head. He never should have had that job. He had no idea what he was doing. He didn't sound the alarms. Either somebody told him not to, because I don't believe that anybody is that stupid when Maui and Hawaii have the best, I think it's Maui has the best siren system in the world for events like this. And even on their website, it says it's used for fires and all this other stuff. So I don't know if it still says it, but it did that day and prior to that. And his excuse was he didn't want people to run towards the fire. No, what he didn't want was people to get notification, because they got no notification. They got no text messages. They got no radio conversation. Their internet was down, no sirens. So there were probably hundreds of people in their houses, sleeping, resting, whatever. No idea what was going on around them. And that's how you kill people. You don't give them any warning. That's how you do it. Any person on earth, and again, firemen, you're not going to run towards the fire if you're not trained on how to deal with it, and if you don't have the equipment or tools to help you. Nobody would, including myself, unless there was somebody there that I needed to help, and so on and so forth. That's what I've done my whole life. Having the notification and the warning, they're not just going to run out of their house and look at the fire and run that direction because they think a tsunami is coming. No, they would run away from the fire, but they're out of their house. They know the fire is coming and they would be able to get away. That's if the police that weren't blocking them would allow them through, right? And it's still ridiculous to me that they never got the utilities down there to shut the power if the power was on. They blocked those people for hours. It takes minutes, especially when the fire is heading in that direction. And dispatch knows, the police chief knows, everybody knows. And one thing that I didn't mention every radio transmission that you're making, it's not only just heard in, everybody hears it. So every officer hears it. Everybody in the stations hears it, and the police and fire and in dispatch. Every communication you make is heard by all. So everybody is on the same page. And their job is to notify the utility company with lines down. Now, yes, there were lines down here, there, wherever. Like I said in my first video, it's called allocation. If I have lines down in a remote area or something that's not an issue, like fire alarm knows, the police chief knows, the fire's heading in that direction. They have both sides blocked. He made the order. And nobody wants to talk to the utilities and get them down there to verify whether the power is on or not, whether the lines are live or not. And I don't care whether they were live or not. You get them there, you cut the power. Done. They go on to another area. And the police let them go through, but they didn't want to let them go through. And I don't believe they contacted the utility company. I don't know what they did, but I know what they didn't do. They didn't save all those people. And that's how you do it. And that police chief is in way over his head, as I said in my first video. It's ridiculous to me. He shouldn't have been a police chief. He was a captain, okay, for his department, and now he's a chief, responsible for everybody on that island. They went around a rule where you're supposed to be a citizen of Maui for a year before you're hired into one of these positions. They went around that, and they hired him anyway. And then they gave him, another $30,000 over what they were paying him originally or whatever. It's over $200,000, as I said now. Why? Does he deserve it? Do any of these people deserve it? Does the mayor deserve it? Does the governor deserve it? Does the emergency manager deserve it? Does the police chief deserve it? Does even the fire chief deserve it? I don't think any of them deserve it. Because too many people died under their care, under their watch. Let's go to the next one, and it'll probably be the last one for this. So the last one was just, how's the emergency manager doing now since he resigned due to health issues? I wonder how he's doing. I hope he's doing wonderful. So I contacted the mayor's office, and I was volunteering to be the next emergency manager. And I got an email back. And this was prior to them appointing the new emergency manager. So the email was that telling me what they were going to do. They said that the mayor was going to appoint somebody for now, and then they were going to, do a hiring process, resumes, the whole thing, and so on and so forth, to try and get a new emergency manager. Okay, understandable. Supposedly, I don't know much about this guy. He used to be, I guess, the emergency manager. I think he's well liked, so on and so forth, but I haven't done much research on him. And how the other emergency manager got the job, they also made a point to mention to me that I can't remember what it's called, but they do it in some other places. So like you get preference for, resident there and so on and so forth. I can't remember what it's called. It wasn't like that where I worked, but that's fine. If it happens, whenever they put out for that, I absolutely will go for that position. Why? Because I don't ever want this to ever happen to Maui again. That emergency manager didn't know what he was doing. He's never been in charge of, an engine company, rescue company, police department, never been on scene, never dealt with an emergency situation, never been in command of anything. He has no idea what he was doing. He got given that position, and it's clear he had no clue what he was doing. I don't care how many classes you take on how to do this or how to do that, so on and so forth. Until you're out there in the field and you have to actually act and do things, that's how you learn. That's how you can do a good job. And he never did that. And that's why, in my opinion, he stepped down, because he knows he dropped the ball. Whether other people made him do it or whatever it is, he can't even live with himself. That's why he left. And they brought somebody else in. He was a scapegoat. But they absolutely need a real emergency manager, of which I could be. Like I said, fire investigator, fire inspector, fire officer for 30 years. I'm not pumping myself up for that position, whoever they get. I just hope that they know how to do the job and they can prepare Maui so this never happens again. So many other things that I want to get through with this. And let's see if I can talk about this one quickly. Yeah, this one will take too long. So I think that's enough for this video. The next one is going to be about the governor signing this decree a month prior to this, natural disaster happening, which he wants to pawn off as a natural disaster because it gives him carte blanche to make decisions on the rebuild and everything else of Maui. So I think that's where we're going to pick up the next time. I appreciate you guys watching this, especially if you watch it all the way through. As I've told you before, it helps with the algorithm, so that even if you're not subscribed, the more time that the videos are watched, the algorithm, how it works is YouTube starts to help put it out to other people that may be clicking on this similar information. And that helps them find it. So if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Please like it. Please leave comments, because that definitely helps and lets me know that I'm reaching you. If you have any questions, throw it in the comments, and I get back to everybody really quickly. And again, just thanks for watching. Please share if you would as well. And we'll see you on the next video. Mahalo, everybody, and thanks for watching. Thanks, YouTube.